Okay, good morning. I think this is chapter 5 of the Abundant Community by McKnight and Block. I'm going to sorry, I shut off the mic for a moment. I'm going to do 2 lectures uh, to cover this chapter, and the associated videos are linked on the on my PowerPoint, but I'll also put the links to the videos on the website, on our Brightspace, and I'm going to ask you to uh, watch those videos. It's better if you watch them in context, like to pause this and watch them, but I don't know if you can do that very easily while you're working on Brightspace. So go back and outline the videos that go with this PowerPoint. I put those videos in the PowerPoint slide order deck in order to make, because it makes sense with what they're talking about. But I'm afraid that if I run it through the PowerPoint like this, through my PowerPoint video, that it won't work correctly. But I might be wrong about that. So um, I'm gonna try it sometime and ask somebody to check it out. But I will do it this way this time again. You should be used to it by now. Okay, I took a little break to take care of Tebow, so I'm back. So I'm going to start this thing off so I get you through this as quickly as possible. Try the first approximately 30 of these. Yes, it is the Abundant Community, Chapter 5. Okay, let me click on the right thing. There we go. This is about, obviously, the community abundance in action. What are the 3 major properties of competent communities? So you should have these memorized if you've read the chapter, or these should be what you memorize, or at least have in the back of your mind as far as having a competent community. That he identifies 3 properties: gifts, associations, and hospitality. And we're going to go through these, each of these. What are the capacities, and what are the capacities of an abundant community? And I put a couple of quotes to just illustrate this. An abundant community, and it should be an abundant community. If I could change that now, I would, but I can't. An abundant community is one that values our capacities and assumes that they already reside within us. So it's an innate capacity. We have values and capacities already within us. It has nothing in mind for us, nor does it treat us or fix us. Okay, let me read it again. It has nothing in mind for us, nor does it treat us or fix us. It takes what emerges and lets that become an asset for all of us. It lets you be together. And that, we could break that down, and probably that's what a lot of this chapter is about, is how that innate capacity, that innate, each of us has these innate gifts that within us that we bring to the table. And if we're in a healthy community, that those are just naturally brought forward, that they are nurtured. In the absence of opportunities to manifest the capacities of a competent community, we are led to seek them in the marketplace. So we start trying to buy them. If we can't find them in our community, we're going to find them outside of our community. Consumerism takes some of its vitality from people for not gaining satisfaction in bringing their gifts into their family or neighborhoods. The cost of seeking satisfaction in the marketplace is that any human quality that operates within it gets commodified or diminished at the moment of payment. Love is not for sale, so you can't really buy it. It's just a repeating kind of, he's summarizing what's already been said in the book. Capacities are the kindness, generosity, cooperation, forgiveness, and acceptance of fallibility and mystery. Those are his 6 capacities. Kindness. What are some of the examples that the author gave for kindness? So what I'd like you to do in your responses to this is answer these questions, okay? What examples can you give from your own life or knowledge? And then generosity. Where does the word generosity come from, and what does it mean? Cooperation. For me to win, you must win. For me to prosper and find satisfaction and have peace of mind, then you must prosper and have peace of mind. Competition is a core value of the scarcity world of systems and the consumer economy, but it is more than just an economic structure. It takes the marketplace mentality as if it uses it and infuses it into the whole of our lives. This proposition is so internalized that it is hard to imagine an alternative. It is said to be the only way to produce efficiency, effectiveness, high performance, and productivity. It is the illusory basis for the good life. So I'm going to have to go back and, edit this whole PowerPoint. But it's basically, you know what it's saying. What hollowness can you think of in your own life that's based on competition? So what are you doing in your own life that's creating a scarcity process, or a scarcity mentality? I'm going to have to go back and, this is really bothering me now. Edit these right. Good, it's Tebow, it's really loud. Cooperation is based on the belief that there's enough for each of us. In politics, it's called statesmanship. Cooperation, as statesmanship in politics, is a commitment to work something out. It is a willingness to debate and argue in a way that sustains the relationship above all. Is it a feminine gift? What is forgiveness according to the authors? So there's another question you can answer. And this is a video, I think, by Peter Block called Whose Problem Is It? And you can, if you can, pause it and go watch it before you move on, that's fine. Or maybe the link would even work, I doubt it. But anyway, because this is a video of a PowerPoint, so it's not going to work. So anyway, I'll put that on the on Brightspace below this video. Forgiveness, the welcoming of strangers. Why is that important? And this is one by McKnight called The Stranger. I find these videos I like to listen to them. Every year I listen to them, so don't feel bad. I think they're interesting, and they're very short and to the point. Forgiveness is the key to action and freedom. This is from Hannah Arendt on the meaning of the Holocaust. So that's pretty interesting that on the meaning of the Holocaust, she says forgiveness is the key to action and freedom. In community, we cannot run from our history together. Forgiveness is required when we have to live together. Forgiveness means we have a way to accept fallibility in the world. So in forgiveness, we accept the other person's weakness. They're fallible. They're fallible. They're fallible. They make mistakes, just like you. And so the fact that I forgive you means that I know I make mistakes too. And if we're really in this in a cooperative relationship, then in a community, then we realize people are going to blow it. And that's why, in our guidelines, we have ouch, oops rules, where we acknowledge that we've stepped on somebody's toes. We, we acknowledge that someone stepped on our toes. We don't ignore it. Abundant communities are known for their tolerance. How is fallibility handled in the system world? So please answer these questions as you go through your response. In the system space, there's no room, well, actually it's answering the question for you in this case. In the system space, there's no room for what is wrong with us, except in the privacy of the annual performance review. It is a secret. It goes into your file. You sign off on it, and it affects your pay. Other than that, it's keep your sunny side up. How does this work in the academic world? That would be a good one for you to answer. So, in the fallibility, how does it work in the academic world? This is a key distinction we make here. Institutions are not good at service and sorrow, the whole tragic, sad part of life. They do not know what to do because institutions are designed to last forever. They act as if they are immortal, which they aren't. So failure, sorrow, and frailty threaten their mythology of eternal life. So institutions, we build institutions as if they are the answer. The medical institution is going to cure death. That's probably the best one here as an example. They don't accept failure, sorrow, and frailty. It threatens the mythology of eternal life. So I know when you guys play your games or do competitions with other schools, you guys sometimes, I know the basketball team does this. I've seen it where you pray, all of you pray together before and afterwards you shake hands. Theoretically, that should show us that this isn't going to last forever. It's the beginning, has a beginning and an end. Okay, the game against Haskell Indian School is not the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Only God is the Alpha and the Omega. So we build our institutions as if it is the Alpha and the Omega. Obviously, it's a competitive marketplace. You have to do that in order to compete with the other people, or at least that's what we say. What distinction do the authors make between our culture's treatment of the mentally disabled and the mentally ill? What was the example the authors used to demonstrate how addiction can be handled? What do you think? Oops, got off on the clicker. Find my... Whoops, now I clicked. I didn't know I could do that. And here's another video. I think this one's by McKnight about disabled or disconnected. This one will break your heart. Mystery. The competent community creates space for what is unknowable about life. To what advantage is the knowledge of a mystery? So mystery is, this is probably my favorite part of his capacities, because in a community, like in a church community, we accept that there's a mystery here. No one, well, if you're a healthy church community, no one knows for sure. And this is why in the old days, when I was growing up, in the old days, 60 years ago even, probably a few years before that, more maybe 10 years before that, maybe 70 years ago, 80 years ago, um, everybody attended the church in the community. Maybe not in the big city. I don't know what it was like in the big city, but in a rural community, everybody came to church on Sunday morning. Everything was shut down. There wasn't any businesses open. They call those blue laws. I don't know why. I guess because I don't know. They turn off the saloons and the but even the grocery stores, nothing's open. I remember growing up as a child, nothing would be open on Sunday, and so everybody went to church on Sunday because if you that was where you connected with other people, even if you didn't believe, and people were accepted there that didn't believe. Um, you weren't expected all to believe because it was understood that some people are in various stages of belief. So you had a mystery that you may not all believe, but you all know that you don't know, even if you think you do. And there's a video about mystery. It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings to search it out. Proverbs 25:2. The competent community creates space for what is unknowable about life. To what advantage is the acknowledgement of mystery? What do you think the advantage is? In actualizing its abundance, the community welcomes mystery. For that is a catalyst for creativity. Mystery gives us freedom from the burden of answers. Answers are just a restatement of the past. That's what I tell people about parenting. I know how I was parented, and I know the opposite of that. I know the past, and I can tell you what the opposite of the past might be, but I don't know anything in between until I'm educating myself what those things might be that work. Describe a mystery from a systems perspective. And, actualizing abundance in individuals is very similar to actualizing abundance in community. Community, we have a physiological needs. We provide for people's safety, security. We search out love and belonging, and we identify how to build people's self-esteem. How do we allow people to actualize their potential in the community organization, in how, not in a designed organization, but in a coming together and allowing organization. It's not particularly by design, because sometimes you have a group that meets together and without even, they call it serendipity, just because of the group of people that are meeting together, it all kind of coalesces into a creative event, right? And that could be good or bad, but if you have a healthy community, I think it's always good. You're able to actualize the capacity of the community. In the culture of abundance, what is a definition of culture? What does the author say about culture? Describe culture in the consumer society. Describe communal or community culture. In the consumer society, we have homogenized and diluted our communal culture and replaced it with a market-driven culture. We have a culture of consumerism. This consumer culture disembers, takes apart from our culture the functions that traditionally worked to provide satisfaction and puts them in a marketplace. When you break a culture apart and say, how can we sell kindness or care or cooperation? How can we sell it, train it, I think it means secularize it. You are disembedding from communities the properties that made them whole. I think it should be whole. The process is most evident in our efforts to export our culture to the global market. So what he's saying there is that this it's like I tell you about dissecting a cat. When you have a whole cat, you have a cat. It's a cat. But when you dissect it into its parts, its little heart and its little paw and its little uh, liver, you have parts, but you don't have a whole anymore. You can't even put it back together. Well, I guess it'd be Frankenstein cat if you could put it back together. And what we see happening when we do try to do this with people or with a uh, kindness or care or cooperation is we try to go over and teach people what it is according to our dissecting of it, our disembedding it from our culture. And if you take it out of our culture, first of all, even if you didn't cut it up into pieces to sell it, even if you, when you take and try to insert our culture into somebody else's world that has their own culture, it doesn't make sense to them, just like theirs doesn't make sense to us. And we've done that with colonizing the United States and colonizing all of the New World. When we came in and took the indigenous societies and we tried to do that with our Native American cultures. We decided that the whole history of the United States and the Native American uh, indigenous societies it's gone back and forth from just leave them alone and let them figure it out for themselves, which then the people that lived around there kind of took it over themselves and started killing people in order uh, to get their land back, or the Native Americans did it until enough white people got enough Europeans got enough guns and overwhelmed them in numbers. Uh, we tried to take that away. Well, what happens then is that then the government decided, well, we're gonna take these indigenous people and train them on how to be Europeans, and that's what they institutionalized the schools for Native Americans. Carlisle School is the most famous or infamous version of this, where they took Indian children away from their families, and sometimes they were given by their families to be educated in the European way. And when they came in, they cut their hair and took off all their native costumes. They weren't allowed to speak any of their own languages. They had to act as if they were European children. And they trained them how to be European children, and they Christianized them by getting them to basically indoctrinating them into the Christian worldview. In the embedded way that a group of people has learned how to live in a place um, is the communal culture. It's how you've learned to live in your own communities. It's the rules you've been taught, the values you've been taught, the time, silence, and the way we deal with time, silence, and storytelling. The culture carries the messages and rules without having laws in the media, from the media. So right now we're being bombarded in an unbelievable manner by rules and regulations about what you can say and what you can't say, where you can say it, whether we're going to cancel you if you say anything outside of our our rules and laws, and therefore we're not going to allow you to. You don't get to have a say in our community. When we see culture only, when we see culture only when we step outside of it. So culture is like the air you breathe, or in fish, the water. Fish swim in the water. It's the water the fish swim in. They don't notice it because it's always there. Communal culture is personal. Neighbors know me by name. I am valued. I have gifts to offer the community. There is opportunity for gifts to be given. There is an order to how we organize our world, but it is not rigid. There is creativity and spontaneity. there's tragedy, we mourn and we move on together and know that we have found our way. We move past, we move through things. We don't ignore them, we don't quit thinking about them, but we're able to manage them because of the community we live in. Communal life, time, silence, and storytelling. Describe the system's concept of time and compare it to a community concept of time. Describe time as a state of mind. What other term have you learned from positive psychology that describes this? What do the authors suggest as the need of the family around time? How does time relate to the appreciation of other people? What, according to the authors, is the problem with silence in the system's perspective? What is implied in our willingness to experience silence? How do communities become confident in silence? I think it should say something like that. What has listening got to do with it? Those of you in techniques probably already, or have taken techniques, we'd spent a lot of time about how important listening is. That's why I laughed about that. Communal culture, time, silence, and storytelling. Talk about stories that you grew up with that talk to you about culture. What stories did you hear as a child? There is yet to be a creation myth about how plastic came into being. Plastic, you guys live around it all the time. But in the 60s, it was being invented and used everywhere. It used to use glass. And when you kept food, you have a glass container. Now we still do, but now we have the option of plastic. And what is the story? I mean, what's the creation myth about plastic? Has anybody told you that story? Who invented it? Where did it come from? What is the primary function of family, neighborhood, or community? How do communities become competent regarding stories? I guess there's lots of questions to answer in this. The stories about our gifts, about our kindness, our generosity, our trust, our forgiveness define us and give us our life meaning. This is where an authentic sense of identity comes from, not from what we buy. The community way occurs when we have a culture that makes naming what works well acceptable and easy. So the idea of a community is all part of the actualizing process. That's how individuals actualize themselves. We learn who we are through our interactions with other people. This is Peter PULA. You've watched some of his films with Block and my mind slipped on that one. One of the videos with the Old Testament researcher and expert. Anyway, he's the one that actually put these videos together, and he talks about his concept of that. The citizen's economy. A modern economist is used to measuring the standard of living by the amount of annual consumption, assuming all the time that a man who consumes more is better off than a man who consumes less. A Buddhist economist would consider this approach excessively irrational. Since consumption is merely a means to human well-being, the aim should be to obtain the maximum of well-being with the minimum of consumption. The less toil there is, the more time and strength is left for artistic creativity. Modern economics, on the other hand, considers consumption to be the sole end and purpose of all economic activity. And that's from Shoemaker, which I think you're going to hear from in a minute. In 1955, Shoemaker traveled to Burma. He's an economist, Shoemaker is. He traveled to Burma as an economic consultant. While there, he developed the set of principles he called Buddhist economics, based on the belief that individuals need good work for proper human development. He also proclaimed that production from local resources for the local needs is the most rational way of economic life. He traveled throughout many third world countries, encouraging local governments to create self-reliant economies. Shoemaker's experience led him to become a pioneer of what is now called the appropriate technology, user-friendly and ecologically suitable technology applicable to the scale of the community, a concept very close to Ivan Illich's conviviality. Okay, there's a lot in there. So basically what he's saying is that we would be better off, instead of relying on a huge corporation producing thousands of shoes in a foreign country, or even in our own country, 100,000 or 1,000 miles away, that we'd be better off to produce as much as possible goods and services that we need locally. In other words, if I can buy it locally, it's a better economic strategy for our community, because the money that I'm spending is kept in the local economy. It's not the money that I spend is not being spent in a separate time zone by different people from a different community. I'm not paying them to do what I can do myself here. So instead of expecting to have strawberries 12 months out of the year, I would have strawberries when they're in season. And I would take enough strawberries home with me, maybe buy the farmer's bruised strawberries and cut the bruises off and jam them up into a jelly or a jam and can those strawberries for future use in the winter. And therefore, I'm keeping all that money that I would have spent in California for strawberries when they're out of season here, or in South America or Mexico. I keep that money here in our local economy, and it keeps circulating right here, and it's better off for our economy. That's just one example. And he has a video, a Shoemaker, that you can watch. Every immigrant group survived initially by creating a circular flow of money that stayed within the community. Read about that in text, and I put a page. I didn't put the page number, so you have to look it up. There's treats in there for him. I didn't give him. He thinks he needs a treat. T-Bill thinks he needs a treat. Okay, so you can look that up in the book. So what that statement is about is when people came out here and they homesteaded, they didn't have a Walmart. They didn't have didn't have the ability to. They didn't have the ability to have their products shipped in. They had to create their own products. So they planted a garden. They planted enough garden that that they could have potatoes that they could survive on all through the winter. And they had a storage pit. They didn't have a refrigerator. They had a storage pit where they put the vegetables, carrots, potatoes, and root crops like that would keep. They would storage them in a cellar or in a storage pit, and then they would can all the excess food that they could produce during the summer so that they could eat in the winter. And then they went out and they dried beef if they knew there wasn't going to be enough game during the winter. They might take some. The Indians took buffalo and they dried it into jerky and made different kinds of food out of it. They took all the parts of the buffalo and used it, and they produced their own products. That they didn't go spend money on until they built little stores when there was enough people. They had a store in town, and you could go in and you could buy special items or trade special items for chicken. So you raise chickens on your farm, and so you could bring a chicken and trade chickens to the guy that had something that you wanted, vegetables, or you could sell your chicken. Then later on, when the economy got a little bit bigger, you sold your chicken to somebody who wanted a chicken, and you took that money and you purchased some candy, rock candy for your kids, and clothing for your to sew your own clothes. So all of that is another example of the local economy. Unsupportive policies. Institutions take over what rightfully belongs in the hands of local citizens. So we're paying for taking care of the elderly, which really should be in our own hands, but because of the way that we live our lives, we have to work 9 to 5 in order to make enough money to buy all the things we want, not what we need, what we want, to be honest. Then we don't have time for grandma and grandpa to stay home with us. That's just one example. Encourages dependency on other things instead of on ourselves, independency. Reduces the power of local community. So in the sense of we have a local economy, we have more power here, we can bring more things to our community. Makes promises you can't keep, immortality in the medical community. And capacity is limited. In what ways do neighborhoods lose out in unsupportive policies? Make a list of those for me, please. No, you don't have to. Look, it's right here. They failed to deliver their promise to keep us healthy, safe, and prosperous, according to these systems. We become more skeptical and cynical because we know it doesn't work. We call for more control and accountability. It's our growing distrust of government, public schools, physicians, institutions, services of all kinds. Can you give me examples of what you've experienced or observed that relates to this? Neighborhoods lose citizens neighborhoods have citizens who grow rusty from failing to do what only they themselves can do. So we don't practice our gifts, and we begin to lose those gifts. We don't pass those gifts or those skills on to our children either. We give into isolation and being serviced. So we pay for services. We reduce our trust in our neighbors, lose trust that our neighbors can take care, that can deal with it. If we need something, last night we had a minor emergency. It seemed like a major emergency. It could have been a major emergency. In my grandson, who's living with us right now, got up, pulled a chair over to the cabinet, and got my medicine from the cabinet. I have a little medicine box where I take my medicine in the morning, noon, and evening, and I fill that up every week so that I don't have to try to handle 10 bottles of medicine and remember what I should take and not take. Anyway, he got up there and his mama found him drooling with the pills on the medicine box. So I had to go through, I think there's probably 10 different medicines. I mean, some of them are like baby aspirin, but I mean, it's still medicine. 10 different medicines and see what was missing. And we found one pill, rovastatin, was missing. And so we called the Poison Alert Center, and they told us that the medicine that he had potentially taken, was not life-threatening, and he wasn't sick, and we made it through that. But my whole point in telling you that story is my wife called next door to see if our neighbor had any ipecac, which is what you give children or people to make them vomit involuntarily. You know, vomit isn't usually voluntary, but it causes people to vomit, and we were going to give it to him in case they told us we needed some of that, so we wouldn't have to go to a store and buy it, because she had already bought it. So if I didn't know my neighbor well enough, she might have been scared to go over there and ask her. And we knew that our neighbor has kids and has probably dealt with this already too. So my wife, as a mom, when she was a mom for little kids, she had some of this all the time because she's a nurse as well. So she knows you keep that around. Anyway, we could ask our neighbors. We trust our neighbor. Our community vision is blurred from dependency and focus outside of ourselves. What are the two basic questions that arise when we analyze these policies? Tebow, you don't get a treat now. No. Okay, I'm back. Which policies should be stopped? And what new policies can be adopted? So think about that in our community, in the communities you come from. What are the two basic questions from the book that arise when we analyzed these policies? So answer those questions according to the book. What 6 simple principles does the author suggest to guide institutions toward community-friendly positions? I guess I'm going to give them to you. Respect and enhance life on a small scale. So we respect and enhance the life that we have on our smaller scale. Maybe we don't have as many kinds of food in our community, but we have more food that's been canned, that's for sale. Maybe we have a farmer's market indoors during the winter for canned products. Understand that people's gifts are more valuable than their deficiencies and needs. So the fact that someone might not, maybe the person who is what we would call mentally deficient has a gift of love. He or she loves other people unconditionally. They trust other people unconditionally, and we value that gift. We recognize that the power of community grows out of our ever-increasing cooperative local relationships and connections. We understand that a local place called neighborhood has unique, irreplaceable value, that you can't buy it. Recognize that local resources are vital to the well-being of a community. And understand that economy and community each derive their power from maximizing opportunities for all the local residents to use their skills and contribute their gifts. If we're not all here, we're not all here. If someone's missing, we're not all here. We need everybody to be whole. The best voices to describe the things institution should stop doing and what institutions could create as new policies are the voices of neighborhood association. The listening table. So you get to hear about that. The listening table. Narratives of life. Policies that support abundant community. In a listening table are institutions that convene listening tables of neighbors and representative associations to establish an agenda for community friendliness. Connectors in the local neighborhood can create their own groups to develop an agenda for institutions that want to become friendly. Either way, these initiatives can create a dialogue that begins to redefine the powers and responsibilities of institutions and communities. The dialogue has three questions. First, what functions can neighborhood people perform by themselves? Second, what functions can neighbors achieve with some additional help from the institutions? Third, what functions must institutions perform on their own? The order is important. Why? Policies that support abundant community, a neighborhood impact statement. So you can read that section to yourself. Policies that support abundant community. Money matters. Lack of decent income limits residents' power. Amount of money used to supply the residents with social services, if applied directly to the residents, no resident would be in poverty except by choice. So what he's saying is the amount of money we supply social services, used on social services, if applied directly to the residents, if we just paid the residents directly what that costs to provide those services, they wouldn't be in poverty unless they wanted to. And I think part of this is just because our local communities aren't working, that's why we have people in poverty, because we're not doing what we need to do locally. If everybody chipped in to help those in poverty get out of poverty, we'd have much less poverty, and because you can be in poverty by choice. Some people choose to be homeless. Now, you can argue whether they have the power of choice if they're mentally ill. So, I mean, that's another whole story. But the fact is that we want to allow people the amount of choice that they can, as much as possible, without hurting themselves terminally. In other words, without killing themselves. You read the section on history of the public assistance out loud or to yourself. Gift-minded philanthropy and funding. Philanthropy is giving away what you have to others. Lack of decent income limits the resident power. Oh, I already did this one. I thought I hit the key. Funding is often based on needs surveys. So they do surveys and they figure out what the needs are in the community. Alternative establishment guidelines to identify neighborhood assets, the gifts of residents. Instead of what people need, what are the gifts? What do they have to give? Don't do needs surveys, do gift surveys. Allocate grants to neighborhoods who plan new relationships for improving health, safety, economy, and the lives of people. Discovering community power. It's downloaded from website, I put. I don't know what that means. Anyway, central purchasing offices, typically used by large institutions to purchase from distant places. So people in a large systems world, you'll have large institutions purchase maybe products from places far away. Why is that a problem? Read examples from your book. So you can just do that. Here's a video by Edgar Kahn about the community. Local people employed by local businesses are a major neighborhood economic resource. The local Chamber of Commerce would agree to post all job opportunities on the neighborhood website for a public place. So we would find all the local job opportunities posted locally for us. And we're talking about, we do that here in Bartlesville, in my neighborhood, is the Hillcrest Association posts. You can post any concern you have. They saw somebody sneaking around in the middle of the night. One of our neighbors said they found these two guys stoned out on their driveway at 3 o'clock in the morning. They called the police. The car was running in their sitting in their driveway at 3 o'clock in the morning. They called the police. When the police arrived, they found the car full of stolen merchandise, drugs. I don't know where these guys were thieving from, but they had backpacks full of drugs, as well as all kinds of stuff that had been stolen from the community where we live. And probably were getting ready to go find another house that was unlocked and empty that they could ransack. Local people could initiate a local currency program partnering with neighborhood associations. So one of the ways they did this in my hometown once was they offered greenback bucks, Greensburg bucks, something like that, where if you every time you bought a product in town, you got bucks back. And eventually they had a drawing for if you had these bucks had numbers on them or whatever, and had a drawing, and you could win the huge amount, a lump sum of money if you won the drawing. Anyway, they were trying to encourage local buying, and they do that here too with your stamps. They give you stamps when you buy locally, and then they do drawings every week. The locally the businesses, local businesses contribute products that you can win if you have a number that comes up. Financial institutions have been known for refining questionably ethical loan policies. Redefining, it should be, questionably ethical loan policies, excessive interest rates, and loose credit card policies. So here at the local economy, y'all know this, there's those credit loan companies where they charge you, they give you a loan on like you show them your pay stub from last month and show that you're still working there, and they give you the money you're going to receive early. According to that pay stub, they give you your next month's pay. Say you can't pay your gas bill, so you go in there and they give that to you. And the issue is you pay them back according to percentage rate like you would a credit card. The problem is that if you miss one payment, it goes up to like 144% credit rate, like an unbelievable amount, almost twice as much as you would have had to pay if you just didn't pay it in the first place. Credit unions recycle neighborhood wealth so that a penny saved is a penny earned, literally. So when you go into the credit union, you're using money from the community. You're not using money that hasn't been produced in the community. It's all from the community. It's from your friends and neighbors who are keeping their money in the bank. And the bank loans that money out to you for repayment, and the bank makes money on the interest, and the people make a little bit of money on the interest by keeping their money in a savings account in the credit union. And so as long as the people don't cash out all their money at once, these institutions work on faith, which is kind of cool if you think about it. People just don't have time to connect their gifts and benefit from association life anymore. We don't have time because we're working 2 jobs, and both husband and wife have to go out and work at a job outside the home. Instead of producing leisure, I don't know what that's supposed to say. Well, I know what it's supposed to say. Instead of producing leisure, it produces labor, slaving. We're slaving our lives away. Having to create the concept of quality time, the best of our institutions are eating up our working time and selling us our leisure time through watching images on glass screens, shopping, and transportation. So in other words, we're willing to work more hours in order to pay our Netflix bill or our um, internet bill so that we can have images on those screens that entertain us. And we're not having neighborhood connections. We're not even connecting with our own family. Reading it, the time for every season, the uh, non-abundant community is redefining them. We need to redefine the most important and most difficult policy change that needs to be made. Flex time policies, family and pregnancy leave policies are mere beginnings toward this end. Should be mere. See, what I did was when I made these slides, I used my voice to text software, and sometimes when I slur my words or if I don't enunciate very clearly, mere, like as in the mere beginnings toward this end, are mere beginnings toward this end, turns into mirror beginnings. Government, but that's still my bad because I'm supposed to go back and edit it. And don't you guys ever turn in a PowerPoint that looks like this. Government, United Way, four major civic associations could convene an interinstitutional table, a forum for creating community-friendly policies that focus first on opening up our time for families and neighborhoods to perform their functions. Who will design and create new policies from moving on? How do we get there from here to there? Who will do this? Typically, this has been done by picking the Blue Ribbon Committee or Task Force. Blue Ribbon stands for first place, the winners. These are generally winners in the system of the world. They generally try to redesign the system with more and better services. So when you pick people that are systems people, you get more systems. You don't get a redefining from systems to community. This is the disease of deciding on the cure. This is the disease deciding what the cure is. I don't know if you've ever seen those advertisements on TV. You guys don't even watch TV anymore, but they have these advertisements where the little germ comes out and says, I don't like that antihistamine, but I'm here to make your nose itch and make your eyes water, and but don't use that antihistamine. So the disease is defining what we're going to do to fix things. Expert panels usually include a step called citizen engagement. This means the experts take input from the citizens and formulate recommendations, then position the recommendations so the citizens will feel heard. Basic services that keeps ownership and control in the system's hands. Then here's a video about Mike Mather, Broadway United Methodist Church, Indianapolis, Indiana. And I love this video. He's so cool. Policies that support abundant community. Democracy and the abundant community. Democracy is a structure and a process built on a belief in self-governance, freedom, and an engaged citizenry. The purpose for being free is defined in the Bill of Rights, in the First Amendment to the Constitution, which grants freedom of expression and freedom of assembly, among others. So I don't even want to get on my soapbox about this, but right now, in our world, this is being torn away and ripped to shreds. And if you don't believe it, you haven't been paying attention. So you need to start paying attention and see what's really going on up in the federal level, not here in Oklahoma as much, but on the federal level. But it's coming, and it is here. It's just not as open because people here carry guns, and we don't, and people here say what they mean for the most part. Freedom of speech not only, freedom of speech not only is about expressing our opinions, but also can be seen to be about our freedom to declare and give our gifts, our ability to give who we are. Democracy in the abundant community. Prison is a societal decision to take away your freedom, and thereby is a place where we can say you are not free to give your gifts. Taking away your capacity to give your gifts is the worst thing we can do to somebody. The opposite of freedom, it's the opposite of freedom, is that you cannot give your gifts. In prison, we will keep you alive, we will feed you, give you shelter and health care, but we will not allow you to give your gifts. And that's what we probably need to change about prison. I'm not saying we don't need a place to punish people for breaking the law and hurting other people, but we need to have a rehabilitation. We need to give them a place to offer their gifts. First of all, redefining their gifts to help society, help community, rather than tear it down for profit, or however they decided to tear it down. All right, just 3 slides left and we're done. Policies that support abundant community, democracy in the abundant community. For more than a century, we have seen an attempt to claim that power comes from competition and the marketplace. There was no mention of competition or the marketplace in the founding documents. Scarcity mindset and its consequence, competition, develop medical effects. We become willing to give up more and more autonomy, remain ignorant of knowing what inherent and natural gifts surround us. We lose touch with our neighbors. They do not assemble or associate. Assemble. All the things we so believe in are not taken from us. We give them away freely. They're not taken from us. We give them. They're not taken like a tax. We give them to who we need. And is that a repeat? Yeah. That's it. That's all. Okay, guys. Thanks for listening. I was intending to break this up into 2, but just consider these 2 lectures your Tuesday and Thursday morning lecture, because from what I'm seeing, we will probably not be in the classroom on Thursday, but don't hold me to that, okay? We may just go ahead and... Anyway, I'll let you know if what's happening on Thursday. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye now. Make sure you answer the questions and watch all the videos, and do a bullet point outline of the videos, please. Just the main ideas.